Welcome back to Damon Brews Plus, brought to you by Ike Sandwiches and our good friends at the Dubliner West Portal. And we're very, very happy to welcome today, I think, as state-of-the-art football analyst as you're going to find anywhere on the planet. Warren Sharp is, I believe, the best at what he does. He has a brand new tome that has just come out. Let me show everyone the PDF file that I was very lucky to get. This is almost 600 pages. It's a masterpiece of knowledge. Warren, I know you and your team worked so hard to crank this out, and you have absolutely crushed it, brother. Thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's so nice to put the book behind me, so to speak, and get it into the hands of other people out there. It is a labor of love, truly speaking. Like you mentioned, it's almost 600 pages of analysis. This is what it looks like in the physical form. You have the PDF form, but I mean, this thing is more than a coffee table book, right? Like this thing will break some coffee tables theoretically. But we go through every single team, all 32 of them, and break down what we learned from them last year. I try to deconstruct the John Maddenism. You are what your record says you are. I do not believe in that. I believe that so many things play into how a team finished the season last year with the number of wins that they had in the standings. And we try to break it down and then get into the expectations for the upcoming season. So we actually, for anybody who is listening on your show, we've got a $1 code. This book is on sale up at sharpfootballanalysis.com for $30 in the PDF format that you have right there. We'll give it to everybody for just $1 if you go to sharp.football and enter the code Niners. Niners will drop the price of the book from $30 to $1, and I promise you will not get better bang for your buck as you head into the season to try to get ready for it than with this book of insights and knowledge.
$1 is insane. This is the kind of knowledge that you want. It's not just knowledge about the Niners, but the division and the league at large, to the point, Warren, where I know that, a lot of your analysis comes from the slant of we're going to put some money on all of this. But even for those who are not wrapped up in gambling and are wrapped up into their team, how it functions, how all these pieces fit together, how there are a lot of lies hidden in truths or vice versa throughout a football season, it's a staggering amount of analysis, and it is clearly a labor of love that you and your entire team have put together. So, look, I just want to hop right into it because I've been covering the 49ers for 20 years. You can't find a more frustrating, hard to understand while you're looking at it season of football than what they just came out of. Before we start looking ahead, I'd love to look back at 2024. To me, the three biggest strikes against the 49ers were injuries and red zone production on both sides of the line of scrimmage. They couldn't score when they got there. They couldn't stop anyone from scoring when they got into the red zone. And I mean, that basically jives with the analysis that you've provided. This team, although it's never one or two things, it really was kind of one or two things for the 49ers, injuries stacked on top of all of it.
Yeah, the frustrating thing to me, just even entering the 2024 season for you guys, as I wrote in my 2024 preview, I cannot believe that the NFL screwed you guys again heading into last season with the rest edge. You were over minus 20 days net rest advantage, which is something that I factor into my analysis a lot, as you said, from a betting perspective. But it's also just a fairness aspect. Can we get as fair as possible schedule out of the NFL offices? And the 49ers were minus 20 days net rest in 2023 and once again in 2024. The first time that had ever happened before since I've been tracking it, and I can go back like 30 plus years. I can't go back to the early days, but with fewer games back in the early days, I doubt that ever happened previously. So probably the first time ever that's happened to a team. And having less rest when you're going up against opponents does end up theoretically leading to more injuries. I've never studied the injury rates of teams, but you guys were dealing with very little rest compared to your opponents in 2023. Then you make the run to the Super Bowl, or, you're going deep into the postseason once again, obviously. And then we see inevitably what happened again, which is tough rest after a very shortened off season. And you're seeing injuries left and right. And, I was begging the football gods, please let the 49ers have one season where they're not one of the most injured teams in the NFL, because every single year that Kyle Shanahan has been there, fourth most injured, sixth most injured, first most injured, third most injured, etc. 2023 was that one year You made it all the way to the Super Bowl. Then again, last year, the most injured team. So injuries certainly were the biggest story, but it was like ominous even heading into the season with the long season that you had, the shortened off season, the difficult rest leading into 2024. That was going to be difficult. And then, when you have a player as important to your team as Christian McCaffrey, we all talk about the devaluation of running backs, and to some degree, that's obviously true. But when you're Kyle Shanahan and you construct your entire offense around that running back, including a massive aspect in the passing game, I want to say 25% of your passes were being thrown to the running back position. That then dropped down to 11% last year without Christian McCaffrey because you didn't have the confidence in throwing as many passes to the running backs that were getting the snaps that were healthy. You're overhauling a ton of your offense, and for them to still perform in some areas, fall short in others, like you said, at the red zone was one in particular, speaks volumes about the difficulty of overcoming things that the 49ers pretty much were trying to do all season long, was trying to overcome different things. Some were self-inflicted and some were things that they couldn't control.
Right. Like you said, I think in your bio or research of last year, it wasn't a fall off the cliff moment. It was a slow erosion of all of the roster assets that the 49ers had. And again, McCaffrey has been the skeleton key that has unlocked Kyle Shanahan as a play caller. He lost that skeleton key and they couldn't bust down any of the doors. As we start looking to 2025, it's pretty easy to see what the 49ers do have going for them. Even though there's no such thing as an easy NFL game, there are games that are harder than others. That means someone's got to have the easiest schedule. And according to all your metrics, by far and away, the 49ers have that schedule.
It's a beautiful thing. If you're a 49ers fan, it's a beautiful thing because you guys go to the NFC Championship games more often than you're missing the playoffs, right? In Kyle's tenure, especially in the last several years. And so the fact that you guys finally get to play a fourth place schedule, you get to play the easiest schedule in the NFL, it's something to cherish and take advantage of. Don't let this moment slip through your fingers. You have to take advantage of the 2025 NFL season while you can, because not only are you being blessed with the easiest schedule, which is not something that the NFL can control, because you get that schedule thanks to the divisional opponents that circulate on an annual basis, plus that fourth place schedule for three of those opponents that you're going to face. But you also play one of the easiest schedules from a net rest perspective. So you finally go from minus 20 days plus net rest, minus 20 days plus net rest the past 2 years, to now a positive situation from a rest perspective. So it's very rare that a team is going to have the number one overall easiest schedule plus a great schedule from a rest perspective. Those are two edges that are going for the 49ers this year. And that's why, everybody is expecting that massive rebound from you. Usually the team that finishes in fourth place last year doesn't have a win total of 10.5 wins. Usually that team is not favored in 15 out of your 17 games. But the 49ers this year, they're already favored in 15 of their games. They already have a win total of 10.5. They're expected to win the NFC West. So it's basically almost as if the 2024 NFL season didn't even happen. We're moving on, build off of the 2023 season. This is our expectation of the 49ers. They should be one of the powerhouses in the NFC, on track to make it to the postseason, on track to theoretically have a solid playoff run. So it's up to the team to get back on track. But you guys certainly lived through it last year. But the expectations are there and the schedule is easy enough that I don't see why you shouldn't feel good about your team entering this upcoming season.
Warren, obviously, having Robert Saleh back in the room, I think, is an instant upgrade. Nick Sorensen, we're not going to trash him, but it just didn't work. Robert Saleh has worked. An improvement on special teams alone, I think, adds a win and a half to the 49ers' overall season win total. You talked about how field goal luck, which is something that you do measure, just went against the 49ers in any and all moments. Everything that could go wrong kind of did go wrong. For this year, again, to get back on track, they're going to need an awful lot of their young rookie assets to come out and play. I mean, there's a scenario where 4 or 5 rookies are on the field for that first defensive snap of the year for this team. I know that your draft models didn't like what the 49ers did in terms of value. You clarify that by saying, hey, maybe John Lynch is smarter than all of us and he'll be having the last laugh. But in terms of where you pick players, where they were basically universally slotted to go, the 49ers did make an awful lot of reaches. So let me just ask you, do you think John Lynch is a good general manager?
Look, it's very difficult to say that I think that he is. I think if Brock Purdy does not emerge, and I don't know anybody who could expect Mr. Irrelevant to emerge and become the starting franchise quarterback and get a contract like he just did. So a lot of that has to be luck. And if that doesn't happen, John Lynch might be out of a job.
I think
right?
everyone's gone. If Brock Purdy
Yeah.
didn't happen, I don't know if anyone remains.
So for that simple fact alone, I cannot say that John Lynch is a good general manager. I do not think that he has done exceptionally well in the draft. The clear models do not agree that he's done well. So I think they are going to need a lot of these young players to step up. I think they're a very fragile team as well. They need their starting caliber guys, the guys that are getting paid the most money, that you guys have more of than most other teams because you're such a top heavy roster with some of these key players getting paid a lot of money. You need them to stay healthy. So you need health from the players that are being paid, and you need these young guys to step into prominent roles. You mentioned Robert Saleh. I just want to make sure that I reiterate that fact to your listeners. I think it's going to be a massive upgrade. I know some of your listeners probably don't love the personnel that you have, front to back on your starting 11 defensively, and it is probably the weak link on the roster. That being said, you finally are going to be coached by someone who not only had a ton of success, but I think still was doing a great job coaching his side of the ball in New York for the Jets. I know it seems like, Robert Saleh coming back, tail tucked between his legs. He wasn't a good head coach. I don't necessarily buy that. Robert Saleh goes to the New York Jets, and that last year that he was there, he's not hiring Aaron Rodgers. He's not helping the fact that Aaron Rodgers tears his Achilles, before he even throws a pass attempt for the Jets in the 2023 season. He's not in charge of the fact that the owner wants to bench Aaron Rodgers, and then he refuses to bench Aaron Rodgers. He doesn't control the plays that Aaron Rodgers is getting called into him. That's Aaron Rodgers' handpicked guy that the ownership wanted him to have in terms of his offensive coordinator, Nate Hackett. So you get all these things that are out of Robert Saleh's control. And then Robert Saleh is the scapegoat who gets fired on the way home from London, and they're lost to the Minnesota Vikings in a game where I think that Aaron Rodgers threw like 3 interceptions or maybe 4. So I just think Robert Saleh was the easy guy to blame. But one thing he does know is how to coach the defensive side of the ball. And you're fortunate now that he is back only focusing on the defensive side of the ball. He doesn't have to do head coaching interviews. He doesn't have to worry about the offense or special teams. And so I think he's going to coach up this defense, and you're going to get more out of those guys than they were delivering over the past couple of years when he wasn't there.
Yeah, he can just drown himself in X's and O's again. And there was so much back-end miscommunication for the 49ers. Their secondary was out of place so often in games, especially in the second half of games where games continued to slip away from them. And I don't know if we can, credit halftime adjustments in the other locker room or just a failure to have a healthy enough team to play 4 quarters and a good enough coach to make the fourth quarter adjustments that you need to close out games. Again, the 49ers would have had a monster year if games stopped at halftime last season.
Yeah, they would have. I look at all of these things because to me, the biggest factor that a coach needs when I consult with different offensive coordinators specifically and some head coaches around the NFL, starting out fast to build a lead, to put the other team behind the sticks, to make their offense be the desperate ones in the second half. That's what you're looking to do. And the 49ers did a very good job of actually getting out to leads, playing well. Their efficiency on the first drives of games, generally speaking, was pretty good. They led at halftime in 9 of their games last year. But their issues were they fell apart, especially in the fourth quarter of games. You kind of alluded to it. They scored just 5.2 fourth quarter points on average, which was 28th in the NFL. They were outscored by 4.5 points on average in the fourth quarter of games. That was the biggest margin in the NFL. They basically just blew games in the fourth quarter by not scoring enough, allowing the opponent to come back into games and score too many points. And as a result, the 49ers dropped a lot of games that they theoretically could have won. On a positive side of things, that helped you get the schedule you got heading into this season. On the positive side of things, that got you a little bit more extra draft capital that, whether you squandered it or used it wisely remains to be seen in the 2025 NFL draft. But, looking back, it stunk, right? It wasn't pleasant to go through that last year, but it actually helps you a little bit in 2025 because you guys were just choking away games in the fourth quarter.
One of the things uncovered in your analysis, Warren, is how decent of a year Brock Purdy individually had around a team that was, again, just not getting the wide receiver separation, the production, the health that it needed, was not getting necessarily the protection up front that he needed. If an alien landed and asked you to explain who Brock Purdy is to the Niners and his position in the quarterbacking hierarchy throughout the league, what would you tell someone who had never seen Brock Purdy before?
I would say Brock Purdy won't work nearly as well for many other offenses, but for this particular offense with this particular coach, he's working extremely well. And that's why he is worth more to the Niners than he is to most other teams, and why he deserves to be paid like he was for the Niners. It's sort of the similar situation. It's really interesting with the parallels from the coaching tree, obviously, but with Mike McDaniel and Tua down in Miami. Like if you stuck 25 other starting quarterbacks on the Miami Dolphins, they would not be able to execute that offense the way that Tua does. They have to have a super quick time to release. They have to get the ball out quickly. It has to be accurate because that offensive line is horrific. And Tua is just perfect for that offense and deserves to be paid for the Dolphins, whereas he might not get that same type of capital elsewhere. The same is true, in my opinion, for Brock Purdy with Kyle Shanahan. So, he's going to get dinged where you look at him league-wide because he doesn't have the prototypical build. He doesn't have the prototypical arm. But if you look at some of the deep passing accuracy and the deep passing efficiency, Brock Purdy's numbers stand up right there with the rest of the
Number
NFL.
One, and for a guy who's got a rag arm, he keeps on hitting these downfield passes quite often.
Right, exactly. And so, and you look at that, what he had to deal with last year, he had to throw the football into tighter windows last year because his receivers weren't getting the separation. I detail it in my book about the tighter windows that he was being forced to throw the ball into, but he's still delivering yards per attempt, EPA per attempt, success rate, completion percentage over expectation, the likes that other quarterbacks simply aren't doing. And he's having to do it behind an injured offensive line with a receiving core that you had very few games where, Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle and Christian McCaffrey are actually on the field together. The number of snaps.
57 plays. That's what you
57.
57. We were healthy today plays for the entire year for that offense.
Which is absolutely absurd for a quarterback to have to deal with, but yet he still performed. And I think the bulk of those losses, if you're going to say, well, who gets the blame pie, the percentage of pie, the majority of it goes to the defense. And then some of it goes to the simple fact that, you can trick the other team and you can out execute them for a while, but at some point talent ends up taking over. It's why like NBA series go 7 games and eventually usually the best team wins. But in a 1-game series, there could be some upsets there and you would have some bad teams making it all the way to the NBA finals, and they don't really want that. Well, with football, it's the same type of thing. You could have execution from a roster coached by Kyle Shanahan and quarterbacked by a guy who's perfect for his team to outperform and out-execute a defense for 3 quarters. But eventually, there's a lack of receivers and some of the dropped passes and some of the closely contested passes that Brock is trying to fit in there. It's just not going to go your way. And especially when you factor in failures down inside of the red zone, which Christian McCaffrey, he dictates how defenses line up. He dictates how they play. And with him not on the field, it becomes much more difficult from a play calling perspective, let alone an execution perspective. If you're not capitalizing some of those areas, and you mentioned the field goal luck issues earlier, this is what turns wins into losses. And they're unfortunate. Like, you can't afford to have these things happen to you in 2025 with the schedule, with everything lining up for you. You can't afford to have red zone failures that lose games. You can't afford to have field goal misses that lose games. You can't afford to have games that you're winning that you just give back to the opponent if you want to get to where you want to get to, which is obviously another trip through the playoffs into the Super Bowl and hopefully winning it this time.
How many coaches would you hire before you hired Kyle Shanahan as your head coach? Is he still among the elite of the elite head coaches in your mind?
See, that's a difficult question because I live in an isolation chamber and I don't really listen to the noise that everybody else is saying. I believe that everybody, for the vast majority of people, and maybe even a bunch of 49ers fans, have now turned on Kyle Shanahan, now dislike Kyle Shanahan as a head coach because he can't win those big games. His teams always seem to fall short. But I personally would rather have a coach that I know is going to get me to those games and hope that my teams figure out a way to win them than a coach that might be good in some of the big games, but we're rarely playing them because our team just doesn't win enough games along the way. And I think offense is the most important part of football. It dictates wins and losses far more than special teams and defense, even though those obviously factor in. And Kyle Shanahan is a genius calling plays, setting up plays. I love the personnel groupings that he deploys, the way that he approaches. He zigs while most other teams in the NFL are zagging with their 3 wide receiver sets and all the different styles that offenses are morphing to over the last decade or so. Kyle Shanahan is sticking with something that's a little bit different. It's more difficult for opposing defenses to prepare for. And he's having success, as we mentioned last year, statistically, a ton of success, despite all the missing pieces and difficulties that they were dealing with. So I really believe that Kyle Shanahan still is one of the best. How many coaches would I take before him? It's hard for me to say specifically. I know that there are definitely a couple that I would, but to me, I'm probably higher on Kyle Shanahan than most people are. And I don't know if that's going to frustrate you or your listeners to hear because you want something better. But I guess the question would be like, who would you hire to replace him? Like realistically,
Right.
Who would you go hire to replace him and say, I feel really confident that this guy is going to be better? Because I don't know that many great coaches in the NFL right now that are just free agents that just get fired for no reason, right? So even if like a guy who's had success, like a Mike Tomlin, there's no way I would rather have Mike Tomlin than Kyle Shanahan, in my opinion.
I think Kyle Shanahan is Phil Mickelson before he won the Masters. It's only a matter of time. It's going to happen. This is one of the best out there. And I would not come off the Shanahan investment at all if I were the 49ers. I think I place more value in getting to big games than a lot of people do who only look at a big game through the prism of, did you win it? Of course you want to win the Super Bowl. Everyone does. As you said very early in our conversation, his seasons go to the NFC title game more often than he misses the playoffs. And that's pretty impressive. It really, really is. The NFC West, I think overall is pretty impressive. It remains so as a division. I think it's 49ers and Rams, and their games will be top shelf liquor when they play each other. That's a huge, huge game all NFL season long. I think the Cardinals are pointed in the right direction for the first time. I do not believe in Sam Darnold, but I like the Seahawks around him. As you check out the objects in the 49ers rearview mirror, give me a little thumbnail sketch of the West and how you think it breaks down.
It sounds like you're extremely high on the LA Rams. I am as well. When I look at the LA Rams, and I write about this a lot, I encourage anybody who's going to check out the book. Remember, it's just $1. Go check it out. It's not going to cost you very much, but read up on all of these teams. I'll give you that thumbnail sketch. The Rams are, to me, by far one of the most like sleeper type teams in the league, even though they've got high expectations from a win total perspective from the games that they're favored in. Think along these lines of context. The LA Rams lost their number 1 wide receiver week 1 of the season. He didn't return to week 8, misses almost half the season. They lost their number 2 wide receiver week 2. He doesn't return to week 8. Neither of those top receivers play in week 18. They both sat in week 18. And yet the Rams still win 10 games last year. That to me is remarkable, especially for a team that, that run game is not all that productive. Like it's consistent, but it's not super explosive. They don't throw the ball to their running backs at all. So you're working with, unlike Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay does not really throw his ball to Kyron Williams hardly ever. And so you're working with an offense that is throwing the ball to tons of backups there for over half the year, and yet they're still winning 10 games. I think this team is better defensively. They're the team that gave the Philadelphia Eagles the biggest test of any throughout the playoffs, and they did so a dome team from LA playing on the road in Philly in the freezing cold with snow and almost won that game outright with the Eagles using tush pushes and all these other tricks that they've got up their sleeve.
Had
The Rams
missed those games, I think the Rams might have won one of them.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And so I think they're a very scary team. I agree completely. I loved researching the Arizona Cardinals. I got really deep into Drew Petzing and what he was doing offensively and some of my optimism for him because I didn't know him quite as well. And last year I was really impressed by what I saw from him. And I give him those kudos in the book, but they really focused on that defensive side of the ball. Bringing in new players, which they obviously needed. They've added a ton of players to the defensive side of that roster, that are going to be very impactful, going to get some quality playing time. And I think that they are headed in the right direction. Clearly, the issue to me comes down to the limitations from Kyler Murray, right? Kyler Murray, his deep ball is very problematic and one of the worst in the NFL. A lot of people don't realize that, who don't really study the Arizona Cardinals. It's a big liability for them. I think if they called the offense, and one of my recommendations to Petzing is reduce the number of deep shots that you're taking on early downs because Kyler Murray just isn't efficient on those types of passes. You'll have more efficiency if you just occasionally use those types of plays when you need to, as opposed to trying to build them into the offense too frequently. And then obviously Kyler Murray's injury history has not been great. Last year was one of the first years that he was actually healthy from start to finish. And then you move to the Seattle Seahawks. I'm not the biggest Sam Darnold fan either. I think that he got great offensive coaching from Minnesota with Kevin O'Connell, and it was just a magical season for them. Unfortunate for them that they did not get a first round seed, right? Like they were with the Detroit Lions, I think in week 18, battling for that. They lose the game, then they lose in the playoffs. I think that was unfortunate for them in that magical season, but I don't think he's a great quarterback. I don't think they have a great running game right now. And so for you to have to win games, but based on average quarterback play, average run game, and hope that your defense is better, and you're going up against like the likes of Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay with their quarterbacks, I think that's just going to be challenging for the Seattle Seahawks. So I might actually have the Seahawks and the Cardinals more neck and neck than most people, but I also sort of have the Rams and the 49ers a little bit neck and neck as well, just because the edge might go to the tiebreakers in that Kyle Shanahan typically has done so well against Sean McVay that edge might end up winning enough, winning the head-to-heads, even though they have a similar record, to propel the 49ers to first place. But I really think the Rams are going to be a very special team this year too.
Hold up your book again for me, please, and give the promo code so people know what it is, where they can pick up this. Again, it is a masterpiece of analysis and stats and information that I think will turn a casual fan into you now outrank the casual fan. There's some really good learning in there. Tell people where they can get it again, Warren.
You just head on over to sharp.football. That'll redirect you to the place you need to be. And if you want to buy the printed book on Amazon, you can. Obviously, it costs more to get the printed book. If you want to buy the PDF, though, it's $29.99 regularly. But you'll find when you enter the code Niners, Niners, just Niners, you'll get the book for just $1. And so you might as well just put in your back pocket, and it's a great reference tool throughout the course of the season. I know that there are a lot of people that like to look at the rest edges, which I cover on a weekly basis for every single team. You can go through here, see if your team has more rest than their opponent on a given week, but also the original lines. If you're a sports bettor, you can see what the lines were this summer for every single game. And then you can get to like the week 13 game and see how much that point spread has changed, whether or not that's reasonable for it to change that much. There's some betting opportunities there by teams getting overvalued in the week leading into a game that this book will help you with as well. And then, of course, just all the background insight. It's great for, you said, average fans, but also fantasy football fans as well.
Yeah, if you want to take it and just learn a little bit more about your team and have a better understanding of what they do well and what they need to improve on, this is a book for you. If you want to go to war with your friends about who knows more football, this is certainly a book for you. It really is something else. And like you said, to be a really great fan, it's not just knowing what your team does, it's the teams in your division as well. It's awesome insight into every single NFL team, their offseason, their roster, how it's all built, how it's all coached. It's really, really impressive, as is your mustache. If you do not mind me saying, Warren, you should be proud of the book. You should be even more proud of that mustache. It's something else.
Yeah, the mustache has been taking longer to grow than the book. Obviously, I've had it for so many years. I don't know what's going to happen if I ever decided to shave it. People certainly wouldn't recognize me, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I like my privacy too, but I really appreciate it. I appreciate the detailed talk about the team. Obviously, I'm sure your listeners do as well. There's a lot of optimism surrounding the team this season, but it's not going to mean anything because you guys have such high expectations if you guys don't get to the Super Bowl and win it. I mean, that's really the only thing that matters for the 49ers, in my opinion, on an annual basis. The same people that are out critical of Kyle Shanahan will be just as critical if he gets all the way to the Super Bowl, but loses that game. And that's just crazy to me, but that's the fact of the matter. Until he wins, like you said, everybody's going to continue to be critical of him. I have very high level of confidence, though, that with the schedule of opponents and the schedule of rest and the current roster and the new defensive coordinator that you have coming back, this team is going to get to the postseason. So now it's just a matter of getting the right matchups in the postseason, having the right health at that point in the season, and winning those games, executing in those moments that matter, fourth quarter, field goals, red zone, etc.
Outstanding spot, Warren. Thank you so very, very much. Again, pick up the book. Use promo code Niners for the PDF file, 99 cents. It'll be the best dollar you spend all year long in sports. Warren, thank you.
Thank you.